guys, Tomboy601, and today we have the Tier 6 brand new premium, the Munchen. She is a light German cruiser. We have a great gameplay at the end of all of the stats. We got a Kraken in it. Definitely a unique ship, and one that is very interesting, but one I'm not fully in love with. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about our comment of the day. Comment of the day goes out to a viewer who leaves a comment on either a video or one of our community polls, and that is just what happened for this one. We're talking about Muheth. He commented on our 750,000 global XP poll. I finally saved up the cash, the XP, to buy a brand new ship, and there's a poll going on right now. He said, I'd go for the Prince Eugen. I had the Torpedoes on the PC version. She wasn't that hot, and I got to 750k and got the Alabama Beast ship. Got to 500k, got the Atlanta. Man, she is nice, makes tons of credits, and got 187 XP and got the Kranzy Krim. Plays a bit like the Omaha, but nothing special. Next one will definitely be the Eugen or the Otago. And let me tell you, I'm kind of going with him. Initially, I really wanted a cruiser for this, but you guys seem to be dead set on the Turpets, which is currently leading with 50%, which is ridiculous. Thank you, everyone who's voting. If you disagree with these idiots who are telling me to buy a Turpets, and you want me to go buy a Prince Eugen, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, go ahead and comment on that video and vote in that poll to let me maybe be able to get out of buying a Turpets, but it looks like we're going down the Turpets roll. Anyways, let's get into the Munchen. She is definitely a unique ship. As recently, I was added to the community contributor list, and that means that this ship was provided by Wargaming for review/promotion. So just to keep you guys aware of any sort of business transactions and to keep the FTC all happy, I just want to make that disclosure up front. We're going to talk about the base stats of the Munchen, then talk about recommended commander builds, my personal build, cover the consumables as well as the mods that I would recommend, then talk about the history of the ship. Spoiler alert, there's not much because this is a paper ship. And then finally, we're going to have that gameplay of me getting a Kraken in this new premium. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and dive on in. Starting off, of course, with her survivability. Munchen, 30,200 hit points with between 13 and 100 millimeters of armor with a 10% torpedo reduction. Let's go ahead and take a look at the armor view. And as we can see, initially it looks bad, but not terrible. But as we dig deeper, you'll see it's just not great. So that bow armor, the fore and aft armor, very thin at only 16 millimeters. We'll go ahead and take that away. And now we're going to start seeing the problem. So at first you look at the Citadel line and you're like, oh, it's out of the water. That's not great. But hey, you know what? It's only a little bit out of the water. It could be worse. And let me tell you it is, because once we go ahead and remove the superstructure, which of course has very thin armor, and we remove the turrets, and we remove this the auxiliary room armor, you see what is the new Citadel for this thing, that it actually stands fairly well out of the water, especially underneath the bridge area and the smokestack. And let me tell you, you're going to get Citadel from there all of the time in this thing. This thing cannot take very many hits, especially from far out, like plunging shots. It's not going to survive. And that's kind of its main weakness. You can, however, see it does have slightly like almost turtleback armor. They have angled the Citadel, which is nice. So I would not expect to be citadeled by many of the destroyers just because of that severe angle. It does provide a decent amount of protection from lower caliber AP, but pretty much anything with any substantial AP, I would be prepared to take a couple of big ol' Citadel hits here in the ship. With that covered, let's go ahead now and talk about her main armament. She has 4 two-barreled 150 millimeter cannons with a range of 14.8 kilometers. Reload time, best in the tier at 5-second space reload time, giving her 96 rounds per minute, which is fairly decent because it turns out she is kind of an HE spammer, and that puts her well within the ranks of the other HE spammers. 180 time on those guns, 20 seconds. HE damage, worst at the tier per shell at only 1700, with a chance of fire of 8% per shell, which means if you give a full salvo, you'll have about a 65% chance of setting fires. AP damage, a little bit better at 3,750, but because of her rate of fire and the fairly substantial damage potential of German AP, she does lead the tier at damage per minute at 360,000 damage per minute of potential damage, you could say. You're not always going to be getting that kind of numbers, but it does give you an idea of the potential this ship has when firing her AP. Secondaries, two-barreled 105 millimeters, the lowest number of secondaries of any cruiser other than ones that don't have any secondaries equipped. Range on them is going to be the bog standard 5 kilometers with a reload time of 3.3. She does have the second worst damage on them at only 1,200 and a relatively small and meager 5% chance of catching fire with those secondaries. Torpedo tubes, she has two 4-barrel torpedo launchers on either side of her. Reload time of those is going to be 90 seconds with a potential damage of 13,700. Detectability on those torpedoes, 1.3 with a speed of 64 knots and a range of 6 kilometers. Finally, her speed, and this is where the Munchen shines. 36 knots, the fastest cruiser at the tier, and with some boosts, you can get it well over 40. You can be outclassing destroyers in this thing. Turning radius, 690 meters with a rudder shift speed of 8.3. Middle of the tier, and not what you want to kind of see for what you would think and feel to be an agile cruiser. She is not. Detectability is going to be fairly in the middle. Detectability by sea, 12 kilometers. Detectability by air, 7.5. And finally, detectability while in smoke at 6.1 kilometers. Overall, not the best concealment as a base stat, but it can definitely be boosted. And overall, she could be built into a somewhat stealthy ship, but she is very middle of the road as far as concealment goes. Next, let's go ahead and talk about recommended commanders. For me, I ended up falling in with Scheer. Initially, Lütgens was my guy just because he does have Ingenious, though after not really playing kiting and realizing that this is going to be much more of a hide behind the island and HE spam sort of ship, Scheer became my guy. Inspirations on him, I have Yamamoto for that increased AP penetrator, just to try to get that extra damage that we can out of our AP shells, and then we have Scott just to increase the groupings of our shots. As far as Scheer's base trait, he does decrease the damage control party reload time and decrease the risk of setting fires. Both of those nice bonus stats, not exactly why I picked him. I picked him more for his regular skills. The first one, burn it down, just to increase the chances of firing of those HE fires. We want to get them as high as possible. Then we're going to go ahead and buff sea detectability with Look at Me Now. Then we're going to buff movement speed with Malicious. And then we're going to buff some of the maneuverability with Steer Clear. Finally, the legendary skill that we have picked out is Fully Packed, just to get those bonus consumables. Right now, having more of the spotting planes is invaluable, especially for the sort of hide behind an island HE spammer sort of ships, just because it allows you to have lines of sight beyond what you can. And with the recent nerf to how long those planes are up, having more of them is definitely the key to success. As far as consumables go, let's go ahead and take a look at them now. She does have the bog standard damage control party, 5-second duration with a 58.9 second reload time. Sonar, she does have the excellent German sonar. Detectability of torpedoes at 3.8 kilometers and ships at 5.4. Lasting 116 seconds with a reload time of 180 seconds. She does get 3 charges of it. And then the catapult fighter, we do have a duration of 100 seconds uptime, reload time of 80 seconds, and 4 catapult fighters ready to go. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the mods she has equipped. In mod slot 1, I went ahead and chose aiming system mod just to increase that dispersion and go ahead and just tighten everything up. She doesn't need any assistance with main battery traverse speed. She can keep up even when hard turning, so she doesn't need the main battery mod 2, nor does she really need the secondary mods because she has the least number of secondaries of any cruiser. We just don't need to buff that. It's not necessary. Next is going to be the sort of one where you choose. I really fell in love with the propulsion mod just because she definitely takes so long to get up to her max speed. This is the one you kind of want just because if you're island hopping, which is kind of how I foresee using this ship, is as a island hopper, dutching and diving behind cover, and then when you get spotted, quickly maneuvering and trying to get out of that spot and speed up in order to dodge, you want the propulsion mod just because of how slow this ship accelerates overall. Of course, the other option would be steering gear, but I think the next mod slot is where you want to go ahead and equip steering gear mod 3, and with that 40% reduction in steering gear time, I think that's much more effective a use of that mod slot. Of course, the other thing you could definitely go for is the concealment mod if you wanted to buff this into a semi-stealth ship, though I really don't see that as a real option, because yes, it's going to let you get to certain positions without being spotted, but once you open up, people will know where you are, and the closer you are to the enemies, the less of a firing angle you're really going to have. And that's one of the main issues I've had with this ship, is the upward trajectory, the ability of these shells to arc, not really there compared to like the Helena. And overall, I think the better is going to be the steering gear, just because it can help you keep and get out of trouble if you're caught out in open water. So with some of those key stats changed with that build, let's go ahead and cover what we buffed. Our chance of fire on those shells is now 10%. We've buffed our speed to 37.8 knots. We've decreased our rudder shift time to 4.6 seconds. And then finally, we've buffed our concealment to 11.6. Decent gains overall, and definitely these end up playing to the ship's strengths. Now let's go ahead and talk about the history. Sadly, München is a paper ship, so there really isn't much to know about her. Basically, the German Admiralty, the Kriegsmarine, realized they needed a fast commerce raider, and what that means is you need a fast ship with not really good armor, because you're going to be mainly fighting supply ships and cargo vessels, and you need to be fast and have a long range. And that's just what this ship is, a fast, long-range ship designed for cruising, to catch up, maybe defeat some destroyers, and if they have a cruiser protecting the supply convoy, to take on that cruiser. Sadly, Plan Z really didn't go as the way it planned, and by the time the war started really ramping up, supplies were needed elsewhere, money was needed elsewhere, and overall manpower was needed elsewhere. So they went ahead and canceled this ship. I believe they were called the M-class cruisers, and they just really didn't go anywhere. And that's the full history of the München. Not a real ship, just one that the hull began to be laid down, but because of other priorities within the German military and the Third Reich, didn't ultimately get finished. So now that we've covered the stats and the build, let's go ahead and take a look at a gameplay with her. And as we mentioned, we do end up getting a Kraken in this gameplay, so that is definitely something that's really exciting. First off, thoughts on the München. She isn't my favorite premium. I will be honest right there. I think she is just too fragile. If once you get out into open water with her, or if you get caught out at all, you're going to be hit real hard, real quick, and you're just not going to enjoy her. She definitely needs to be played on the right map, and because you can't really choose maps that you're going to play on this game, sometimes there's just not a viable place for you to play this ship the way it needs to be played, which means you're kind of caught out maneuvering in open water, and that is not what this ship is good at. Anyways, New Orleans over there giving us the good old, either the whale handshake of, hey, you just bought the giant premium ship, or B, he recognizes us. Who knows? But that is what it is. We're going to go ahead and play this middle part on estuary. King George pops up right there, and we're going to go ahead and start taking shots when we can. He keeps on coming in and dropping spot. We launch our plane just to try to get more consistent spotting on him, and we're going to go ahead and open up with HE, see what kind of fires we can get started. We, of course, are spotted as well, because their players are also going ahead and launching those spotting planes. This does give us an opportunity to kind of come in close and test out the AA once we get into range on that other Nuremberg. Anyways, at this point, we're just going ahead and shopping around, and let's go ahead and talk about the HE spam potential of this ship. As I alluded to earlier, I think the firing angles on this ship aren't the best. The ability of the guns to traverse up in order to get the high arcs is not there compared to, say, the Helena or the Atlanta, which means overall you are going to kind of struggle to get to positions where you would usually play the HE spammers. So you're going to have the speed advantage to get there, but sadly you may have to play a little bit further away from the rocks, which means a lot more ships are going to have access to firing at you, and you really just don't want other ships to fire at you in this game. Anyway, Nuremberg hiding behind that fort, but guys, guess what? We're going to talk about this in an upcoming Mythbusters episode. forts don't actually exist in this game. Yeah, that's right. He thinks he's taking cover, but he is not at all. As far as game mechanics go, that fort is fully invisible, so we're going to go ahead and land the opening shots as we can. Fiji, we see him. He looks to be an easier target just because we can actually track him, and we're going to go ahead and start reversing, trying to get our cover, because 2 cruisers on 1 is not what we want to do, especially when we are fairly broadside. Fiji coming in looking like he's going to try to make a run at us, so we're going to go ahead and switch back to the Nuremberg. We can no longer shoot at the Fiji, but we still have an active target. He can spot us through his spotting plane, so we are just going to prepare and try to kind of dodge his incoming HE shells. Thankfully not firing AP, because that could have ended our day really sadly. We pop up the torps just to kind of get defensive torps off, see if that Fiji is pushing in, give us some extra time to go ahead and prepare. He is coming in. Sadly, I think we ended up firing it real low. We're going to go ahead and switch over to AP, because he is broadside, and if there's one thing ships don't like to be, it is broadside to German AP, and we are going to go ahead and punish him for it. Opening citadels, that's 3 citadels on the Fiji. He hits us back, doing a decent one, and we finish him off, but he takes a giant shot at us. His last shots take us down to only a 3rd health left, and we are now going to have to play this game very tactically. We played a little sloppy on that opening thing, and we are now punished for it, and we now no longer have the ability to be very sloppy for the rest of the game. That is the Munchen in a nutshell right there. You mess up at all, you get a wrong shell into your ship, and you are going to eat a citadel and be down a majorative of your health and need to kind of limp around the rest of the game. You have excellent speed to maneuver and limp around, but you do have to play now super cautiously. King George, we're able to try to start targeting him. It's kind of hard because both the Nuremberg and the King George are in the same line. To switch between them is a little rough. We keep on shooting at this rock, just trying to get a little bit of shots through this little peephole. We take a couple rounds here and we realize, oh, we're spotted by someone else. We need to go ahead and move. It's an enemy Schors. He has a really good line of sight of us. We go ahead and pop that repair party, because we're going to go ahead and try to maneuver out of the Schors line of sight, and then he won't be able to fire at us, and hopefully he won't be able to set another fire to us. Although Normandy now also pops up, so we need to hightail it out of there, and it is now full speed ahead. Normandy hits us too. Thankfully, it overpens, and we are still alive. We are now down to an 1/8 of our health. Gaede pops up, and he has torpedoes in the water. We go ahead and pop our sonar. As soon as we know another ship is nearby with torps, we're going to go ahead and watch that, especially when we have such little health. Gaede, well within the 5.4 kilometer detection radius on our sonar. He's going to stay lit even when he's inking up, even when he's using that smoke. We can go ahead and see him, and he is a relatively easy kill as we angle in and try to take as little damage as possible from him. And there we go. We still have Schors fire coming in. Looking back at the Nuremberg, seeing if he wants to go ahead and peek out, because people know we are definitely a damaged ship. There is blood in the water for the sharks about. We are chumming the water, especially when we're in a semi-exposed position. Thankfully, we're going to go ahead and take advantage of this smoke here. Sadly, they do have a plane up, that Nuremberg, keeping that plane up, keeping us spotted, and we're going to go ahead and duel this Schors. He is somewhat broadside to us, so we're going to go ahead and switch on over to AP, test out the AP, and just show you what this AP can do, and the reason why we have Yamamoto out on here, because we're going to be able to ruin this Schors' day. He has way more health than us, but we are going to go ahead and pump some AP into him. Thin deck means we're able to get that citadel, one citadel down, and then the final blow on him, another citadel, and he is out of there. And we're going to go ahead and use our rudder to try to kind of dodge those and stay out of the way. Normandy now coming around, but that Nuremberg, he knows when the time is right to strike, sees that we are definitely focused elsewhere, and decides this is his moment to push through. And we're going to say, sir, we have AP loaded, and you're going to have to come out broadside to us. And that can't end well for you. So first salvo away, and a devastating citadel there. And we're going to finish it up right here. and that's a dev strike somehow. Not sure how, because I thought dev strikes need to kind of be one full salvo, but hey, we'll take a dev strike when we can take a dev strike. Dunkirk still up, and we're going to go ahead and push this way, attempting to get rid of this pesky spotter plane. We only have 2,000 health left, and we need to get rid of it because we are, like I said earlier, a juicy steak where people definitely want to go ahead and kill us. Dunkirk fairly well out in the open right here, and we can go ahead and start pumping some HE into them. We are once again regular spotted now, and that tells us, uh-oh, Normandy on our tail has seen us again, and we need to start hightailing it out of here. We take a couple of shots there, thankfully HE, and they don't appear, they either bounce or they end up hitting just nearby us and potentially disabling, but thankfully they don't. Normandy now firing at us, and it is now time to take evasive action. This is why we have the rudder shift right here, just to try and avoid what we can. Thank the gods of dispersion, because that definitely could have ended us right there. We take another hit, instantly repair party, because we get set fire, and we cannot afford to lose any health from a fire right now. We're going to go ahead and start to try to hit the Normandy with what we can, getting a couple shatters, and our teammate doing well to go ahead and citadel him. Thankfully, I think we are not the primary target of him now, because he definitely has some bigger fish to fry, and we're just going to dial in and try to find it. We got a couple of hits there, and now it's time for us to start pumping out lead and starting to hurt this Normandy. We are regular spotted, of course, but thankfully we're pushed up against this wall right here, which means we don't really need to worry about anyone other than this Normandy, and we can see his barrel, so we know when he's going to fire at us. Really low health, and we take him out. That's the Kraken. 5 kills. That's what we like to see, and we can now see the 2 of the remaining battleships are pushing in on our position, and we need to turn away because we cannot be seen by them at this point. It is not an option. We're going to go ahead and fire off our defensive torps when we get the chance, just as a way to kind of protect ourselves and try to buy us a little bit more time. Even if they pick up on the torps, it's okay, because they're more of a distraction and more of a, hey, you don't want to come here right now. You really don't want to come here right now. Just don't think about coming through this. Let me run away. We're back up to full speed, and we're going to try to run around the corner and get to a spot that we can go ahead and start hitting down both of these battleships, because they are definitely the biggest threat to us. We go ahead and finally fire our port side torpedoes. It's kind of a mistake on our part, because we definitely should have picked our starboard side to there and then our port side for this Dunkirk, just as a double get away from me kind of a hedgehog maneuver. But sadly, we don't do that, and it's going to end up costing us in the long run. We are running away at top speed, and we do have eyes on this Dunkirk, and we're just going to start firing shells, seeing if we can go ahead and peek out, waiting for him to show his face, and it's just not there. Teammate says get back, and we're like, we're trying, we're the fastest cruiser in the game, and we're running as fast as we can, but we are now regular spot, and you know what that means? We are dead. That's right, King George enacts his revenge, and we are sunk. But 93k in the Munchen, that kind of shows you what this ship can do. Overall, not my favorite premium. It is an interesting premium to play, but it's just not the one that I would choose. It's very difficult to play. You may find more success if you're a really big into HE spamming, but that's just not me. Guys, that's my Munchen review. If you like it, go ahead, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, follow me on all of my other social medias. That's Instagram, that's Twitter, that's Twitch. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. See ya.